Hey everybody, and welcome to Jolt Cast episode 1. We are going to be talking about game development techniques, indie games in general, and just our thoughts about the current scene at the moment. I'm your host, Nick Sedan. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Sedan, and I'm joined by these three lovely people. Would you all like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Louis Ionescu. I'm formerly known on Game Jolt as Jelly, now I'm known as Louis. For further stuff about me, you can check my Twitter.
Hi, I'm Nathan Orchard. On Game Jolt, I am NT, and yeah, same as Louis. Check my Twitter if you want more info.
Hello, I am called Anton Jonsson. On Game Jolt and Twitter, I am Skimitri. Feel free to check out my Twitter. I do games and stuff.
This show is going to focus on talking about indie games and game development in general. Think of it as kind of like a podcast, a short discussion, if you will. We have 4 topics lined up today. We are going to be talking about experiences in indie games. There is nothing wrong with being a broke indie developer. Over time, overload. And the last one, fan games and original games from a new developer's perspective. We hope you enjoy the show. Let's begin. First up, we have Louis with her talk, Experiences in Indie Games.
So, everyone from Game Jolt, as they joined Game Jolt, have come for the indie games, of course. But along the experience, of course, they've had a lot of indie games they've liked, a lot of experiences have lingered on. And in this discussion, I say let's talk about the indie games that remain with us. For example, the Catamites indie games have always remained in my head. They're very quirky, flashy. You don't know what to expect. I think they're pretty defining for indie games. What do you guys think?
Yeah, people like the Catamites. They definitely make these really weird and quirky experiences, like you say. Like, you don't get that from major AAA studios because it's a risk. They don't want to take an unnecessary risk to make something kind of out of the what's expected. So like people like
out of the usual.
Yeah. So people like Catamites or Jake Clover, just making these weird little games, just really cool.
Yeah, I think they're very defining of the indie game scene as well. Like, they are very strange, very very weird, especially compared to AAA. But they're definitely not afraid.
With indie games, everything goes. Like, if you want to make a flying pig that shoots bombs and snorts at you, it's possible with indie games. With AAA games, someone's gonna question you, like, what's wrong with you, man?
And I think that's great. It allows people to explore different themes or ideas that aren't allowed, so to speak, in the AAA industry. You can explore darker themes or strange or more obscure themes and ideas, which is also something very nice. We should explore the art form to its fullest, and I think indie games really helps getting more games that explore these ideas out there.
Yeah, recently the game Inside came out, which I don't know the name of the developers, but it's by the people that made Limbo. And I don't know if you guys have played or seen gameplay of that game, but without trying to spoil it, it's pretty nuts. The game itself has more or less no context. You start out in a forest, there's no instructions, all you've got is what's on screen, the forest scenery and a title. There's nothing explaining how to play, and then you just go. And then at the end, it just ends. There's no menu. Even at the end of the game, the game doesn't close, but it just sort of takes you back to the start, and that's sort of how you know that you've played through it. But yeah, the game itself, it's super dark, and the way they don't even need to explain it. You just play through it, and it's really good. It's got different puzzles and stuff. It's really well designed, but also messed up. I've seen the entire game played, and I do not understand the story behind it at all. But it's still even without that understanding, the game itself is just really good.
I think that's something that's very defining of indie games as well. Like there's a lot of like things that aren't like visible at face value. Like like Five Nights at Freddy's is a good example. Like there's a lot of like just follow me here. Like there's a lot of like hidden stuff, like beyond like the top of the kind of the crust. There's a lot of like secret lore and like very like you can analyze it a lot. And I think that's like it really encourages the community to like really play the game and sort of analyze and like dissect what a game is and like what it's trying to tell, which like
Basically become a detective about the game.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think that promotes more gameplay, really, hidden lore and stuff. Like, if it's well done, it just makes people like want to explore more, and gives the game that extra bit of depth. Like Undertale has like a heap of hidden lore in it.
Yeah, like I guess games can kind of convey this message in different ways. So like regarding Five Nights at Freddy's, Undertale, all that stuff, the lore, like the hidden lore for you to find, that's kind of what makes it strong, and that's kind of what gives you that experience and stuff. Like and then like you say with Inside and stuff, that's less about finding out the lore, it's kind of like figuring out what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Kind of like games like Journey. Kind of what else is there? I suppose Dark Souls as well, essentially.
yeah.
Legend of Zelda.
To be honest, I would say Zelda's a bit more spoon-fed towards you, but maybe not so with the Breath of the Wild. That does seem like a more kind of. Well, actually, you know what? It like. I don't know, maybe the original Zelda was more like kind of like this kind of figure out a lot of the stuff by yourself, but that might be due to its kind of simplicity. But yeah, like games can convey the experiences in many different ways, and I feel like it's important that they get it right. So for example, like if there's like a shooter game and but you don't know what's happening, you don't know why you're doing anything, that's awful. Like for a shooter game, like it would probably be you need because you're going to be running around a lot of action, so you're going to have to need these kind of points in time where you get like an update to what's happening with the story, and the experience should be more focused on how you feel in the combat zone. But yeah.
I mean, it's less of an indie title, but I'll mention it anyway just because I think it does it well. Is the Portal series has like
that's
stuff hidden all throughout it. Especially Portal 2, like all the stuff. It's late enough for me to not have to worry about spoilers, right? Like most people have played it by now.
You'll never say from people who doesn't want spoilers.
Well, I'm gonna say it anyway. Like when you fall down to like the old Aperture Science and like Cave Johnson is talking on the loudspeakers, and you hear like all these audio clips and stuff, and it just like gets you thinking about like what happened, and it tells a story without telling you the story. It gives you just enough to work it out on your own.
I think that's sort of it plays on like the human imagination. Like often a monster in like a horror game is the most scary before you have actually seen it. Like your imagination can do a lot more to scare you than like an actual 3D model can. In reality, it's more like the atmosphere and.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember the name of the game. Second one was called A Machine for Pigs.
Amnesia?
Yeah, that game.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's a horror game where like, at least throughout the start of it, you don't really see any kind of actual monster, but you're sort of aware that there's something somewhere.
Yeah, definitely with horror.
With horror games, it's tension building until something pops up. And then all that tension that was built up just pops up in the jump scare. Like, you jump and you're scared. Horror games, a good horror game builds up tension with the atmosphere and the story and the lore behind it. It's not just jump scare, stuff jumping at you.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of indie developers favor the horror genre because like you said, you don't need to focus more on the 3D model, but just the experience. So it's just implementation of sound, lighting, kind of level design, just kind of the gameplay as well. and a lot of gamers are horror fans. Like me, I'm not a horror fan, but definitely on Game Jolt there are a lot of horror fans, and like a lot of the audience has come through watching YouTubers play horror games and such. I remember when that was massive a couple of years ago. Now it's kind of, I would say it's settled down a lot more than it had been, but still, it's good to see a genre just kind of emerge.
Yeah, because like before Amnesia, and like it was like non-existent, and then it sort of popped in because it was so. What I imagine is like because it was so favorable to like YouTubers to have like horror games, because they could react to something like very like overreact, or like just have something to react to very strongly, and that sort of viewers like to see that. They like to see like people being scared.
Yeah, I think Amnesia and probably Slenderman were two pretty big games in terms of getting the whole horror game genre started, or at least more popular. It's a bit off topic, but I found myself to have like this sort of inability to play horror games properly. Like, you know, most people like get into it. It's like, oh gosh, this is all so scary, you know. Whereas, you know, I play a game, and even if the game like has you die when you like touch the monster or when it gets you, I guess it's like a coping mechanism for me to like not be scared, but I tend to like get angry at the monster and try and attack it. I'm like, no, screw you, monster. Like, it's just sort of like how I play them.
I do the same thing too.
I kind of do the opposite. I kind of embrace the monster. I never take horror games seriously. I think, remember when I was first playing Slender, I was just walking around a bunch, and then when I first saw the Slender Man, I wasn't like, it didn't make me jump. I just kind of was like, oh, that's him, hi, and that was it. That was the end.
Like, hello, friend.
The first time I saw Slender Man, I ran at him.
The first time I played the Slender game, it was quite long ago, and I can't remember how young I was, but I was like probably quite young, or at least a bit younger. It came out like, what, it'd be like 5 years ago, something?
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like an ages. I followed the fence for like ever, because I was scared of like something happening. Because it's the thing, like my imagination like ran wild, like I hadn't played it before, and like there's something in this wood is like hunting me. I'm just gonna stick with this fence, because only this fence is will protect me. It didn't protect me, and I died horribly.
So yeah, going back onto like indie game experiences, just to recap, I guess, just like it's such a good kind of medium to show off video games. Like, it might not be as appealing and as financially stable and successful as major companies, but the end product is definitely more interesting, and if done right, just the experience you can get from it can be absolutely surreal.
I think it's a great way to explore new ideas without enormous risk.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, there is enormous risk, I must say. Like, people risk their like livelihood making games, and like they fail often. Like, there's definite risk involved.
I guess in that sense.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But like, I guess without the risk of destroying a large company's
I get what you mean.
There's nothing to hold you back from trying something completely new and never heard of before.
Like, you definitely get the more interesting experiences from hobbyist game developers, I feel. Like, you get a more kind of traditional and kind of more solidified experience from games that have budget put into them. But yeah, you'll never get like a weirdy catamized experience from an indie game with a studio. That's what makes that special.
With indie games, you're your own boss, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's common to see less diverse and interesting games from larger developers, because like they need to make money. Like, that's more or less their end goal. Like, yeah, they want to make a good game, but if the game doesn't make money, they're in trouble. Whereas with indie developers, most of us don't rely on game development for the income. At least most of the less known indie devs, some of the more well-known ones probably have a more stable income. But because we don't rely on game development itself, like, to survive, it doesn't matter as much if the game doesn't pan out and doesn't sell or anything. So we have that ability to explore these new ideas, be it completely weird or whatever, simply because we're not relying on it to keep us alive. You know?
So essentially, you're saying there is nothing wrong with being a broke indie developer, which is quite interesting because that is the title of the next talk. This is by NT. There is nothing wrong with being a broke indie developer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the idea is, like, I was thinking about it the other day and had brief conversations about it. On Game Jolt chat and a few other places, I've seen, like, probably more so the younger, newer developers, sort of looking more at indie development as a way of, like, becoming rich and famous or something, and, like, they seem to be very against, like, the fact that they are currently, you know, broke indie devs. Like, and it's sort of like a common stereotype to think that indie developers are generally broke or have low budgets or something. And I mean, on Game Jolt, that is mostly the case. Most of us over there are working alone or working in small teams. Like, I came to think, like, I don't see anything wrong with being a broke indie dev or, like, a low budget indie dev. In fact, in a way, I sort of like it. I think it has a way of, in a sense, creating a stronger sense of community, because so many of us are either broke or low budget or something. It gives us a reason to work together more, because, you know, we all have a general understanding that we don't have the money, or most of us don't have the money to go out and, like, buy resources from websites or pay people, like, per hour for their work and stuff like that, which sort of gives more reason to do things like on a revenue share basis, that sort of thing, and work together as teams to create games, instead of, like, alone, or instead of just buying the resources. For example, me and Skamitri here work together. I do the programming and he does the art. Like, I can't do art for my life, so when it comes to making games, I tend to work with other people because I can't buy resources. I'm terrible at making them, but I can do programming, you know, so it sort of gives me a reason to work with other people, and it sort of creates a more tight-knit community, I think.
Like you said about most people on Game Jolt and developers in general lack money. Another point, like, which is I've found that applies for myself, and I do see some other people doing it, but it's not very common, is that I make games for fun and for other people's enjoyment and satisfaction. I personally don't make games so I can become rich and famous, and, like, some people will milk the market, some people will just go ahead and make all sorts of games, but personally, I like indie game development is not the most kind of financially stable market, so making a game for the fun of it is fine. Like, if you get no money because of it, but people are having fun with it, surely that is a greater reward than getting some money. The feeling of satisfaction, and then the fact that you actually get some fans as well, some people who appreciate your work. Like, would you rather have that, or would you rather have a tenner? Like, ultimately it depends on, like, the kind of person you are, but for me, having a person's kind of satisfaction is like something, like, because a tenner, you can get rid of that, you can spend it on a pizza, that's it, gone. But person's satisfaction, that takes a lot more to get rid of.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that sentiment, and I definitely think, like, because I make games generally, like, mostly because I like making games. Like, I make them for myself. Like, I make the kind of games I would like to play. and it's really satisfying to like watch people enjoy them or like just play them and like have an experience emotion, even if it's like anger or like frustration. Just watching people react to what you've made is like a very satisfying experience, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I'm definitely more on the side of like making games for fun. Like I do it. Like I mean, obviously the main reason I do it is because I like it. You know, I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. It doesn't really make any sense. You know, it's like you wouldn't normally, at least not straight away, apply for a job that you know that you're gonna hate, unless like, of course, there's no other jobs available. In which case, sometimes that's what you've got to do. But like in terms of this, like, you know, I like making games. I have since I was young. You know, I started doing it, and ever since I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I do like it, and I would do it whether I was making a living from it or not, which right now I'm not, but I would definitely like to be able to just do this, you know, not do it like to become rich. I don't care about becoming rich, but, you know, I don't want to have to work.
Just being able to support yourself.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of the general workforce, and like there aren't any jobs that I picture myself doing and enjoying, so I'd love to just be able to do this. So in a way, I'm doing it for money. But that's not like the main reason. The only reason I'm doing it for money is because I want to be able to do this and just do this.
I definitely think like there's a value to having a job that you like or love doing even, rather than having a job that like is really paying well. Like there's a lot of value in having like something you look forward to going to in the morning.
Pretty much the argument of not being able to make games because you don't have money is pretty invalid, because there are many free tools you can download. Even Adobe is not very secure with their product pirating, and you can easily take them, like they pretty much encourage you to pirate their stuff because they know one day you will end up using the paid version of their software for your actual job. So making indie games being poor can be a good way to practice for a better job, but like NT said, it's pretty much about doing what you love and getting better at it. It's not about the money, it's about what you love.
Yeah, and I think like going back to what you said about like making, like, because you said you do programming and you don't do art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like purchasing assets or stuff like that. Yeah, like that's a thing you can do and all that stuff. But then like just working together with other people who are in the same boat, you get much more intimate and a much more kind of just better feeling when working on a game, because you're just two like-minded people working together, like
empathy.
Yeah, it's just
empathy, like I am broke, you're broke, we're both broke. We'll make stuff work.
Yeah, let's make stuff together, and then you got to share the experience of like satisfaction of success, if it is a success. But if it's a failure, then you both get to learn from your mistakes. Nonetheless, you must have earned something
Learning from mistakes is the best way to learn about everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the process of creating something, like even if it's like something bad, like just creating like a graphic or like creating an experience, it like it outvalues the, like I would never like purchase or like want other people to like, I wouldn't purchase assets because even if my assets are subpar compared to like professionals and stuff, it's my graphics, and you know, it's like this personal satisfaction in like knowing I created this, I made this, and this is my like experience, and I'm sharing it with people.
Yeah.
Plus, if it's crappy, you blame it on yourself, and you don't blame it on the one who made the asset.
I definitely do what...
You made the asset bad, it's your fault.
Yeah, I definitely do what Skimidra was talking about, like, you know, I use Game Maker, and your game says the Game Maker Marketplace up, and there's plenty of assets up there that you could just pay for or even get for free, download and use in your game. And so many people are like, oh, you know, don't reinvent the wheel, you're just wasting time. And I'm sort of like, but it's not my code. I sort of want to reinvent the wheel because then I made it. I know exactly how it works. I know what it can do, what it can't do, and if needs be, I can extend on it. Maybe even make something better than what that other person has already made.
In the past, I've used existing code assets, and then when it comes to the time where I need to add or change something, I have to take out like an hour or 2 hours just to look through the code and understand it. And like that's just unnecessary. Like, yeah, code might be easy to read and all that stuff, but still, it's unfamiliar territory. And if you made it from scratch, you know exactly how it works.
And sometimes you get the luck with an asset that is not with comments on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a whole mess. You don't get anything, and there's like no comments in it.
Yeah.
Like, you're so lucky when you get that.
Well, most game maker developers don't leave comments. Well, I'm sure you do, Renzi. Like, I'm sure you're a beautiful game developer when you code. But
thanks, man. And
yeah.
I try to most of the time, even if that, like, I don't comment enough. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go back after creating a system and comment code for, like, I'm sort of like, I'm gonna do this for myself later on, for when I haven't worked on this for ages and I go back to look at this thing. I'll have an idea on how it's doing it, but I won't remember exactly what it's doing. I'll have to look at it. So at that point, I'm like, I'll leave a few comments here and there, leave a few reminders, like, say if there's a variable doing a very specific thing somewhere, that I might like say next to that variable what it's doing and where, so that way I know it's not like just some pointless variable doing absolutely nothing.
It's sort of going back to the topic of like there's nothing wrong with, like, you talked about these young people like who aspired to become like the next big thing, or like riches and fame, and I think it's always nice like imagining like everyone has like an artist soul with like, I want to create something big, and if it turns big then it like becomes big. But I think there's nothing wrong with like aspiring to make money, because that means we'll have game developers who can afford to be game developers, which is like full time, which is nice. But I think it's important to admit, like, when you're not at that level, like, you need to like work up your skills and like your resume, and work up your game making skill, like your developer skills, before you like try to make something and sell it. Like there's a lot of value in like making free games.
Yeah.
When you're starting out.
I think like what you're saying is right. Like, there's nothing wrong with aspiring to make money. But I think it becomes a problem when you're too focused on just making money to the point where it affects what you're doing, like in a negative way. Like, some people try too hard to make money, and then, I mean, a lot of indie games fail. Like, it's a thing that happens. It sucks, but yeah, it's hard to do marketing with so many people making games. It's hard to get people to play it, because there's just so much being released all the time, and that makes it really easy to put a lot of effort into a game, release it, and then have nobody play it, or just a few, nothing substantial, to the point where the game would be more or less considered a failure if it is like created just to make money. I think that's a pretty huge place on the mobile marketplace, because there's thousands upon thousands of apps being released every day, and if you don't have a marketing campaign or like anything, like if you just release the game and nobody sees it, then that's about it. The game just goes with the rest of the apps that are constantly being released at that time, and then nobody plays it. So if you're aiming for money, that kind of thing can lead you to being pretty mad, pretty upset, to the point where some people even just quit, simply because they were trying so hard to make money.
It's definitely a saturated market.
Yeah, I think like, going back with the free games and your first games, I definitely feel like when you are starting off making games, you shouldn't limit yourself with money and making money. Make whatever you want. Make whatever makes you feel good. Makes whatever you would play. Make something fun that like your friends, yourself would enjoy. And then once you get a bit of experience and start to know, thinking like, hey, I could actually. People would probably buy this game for the amount of content. You have to then take the time to learn your market, make and craft the game. And if you can do that correctly, then you'll get your money. It might not be a lot, you might not be a millionaire on day one, but you might get a little bit of cash, and just like, yeah, don't dive in head first. Make like a racing game and go like, this is gonna be the next like Gran Turismo, you know. And it's just like it's not. It's you need to take the time to know your market, know your audience, know the game, and also have some time and experience working on games as well. Like, so just take the time.
Know your limits is like very important.
Embrace being broke for a while, because you might not get money, but what you'll get like invaluable experience, invaluable kind of development techniques, and by making like just nice cool games, you'll probably even get the attention of other developers. And going back to what your first point, you can then team up, collaborate, kind of just say like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at coding, so if you can help me with the sound, if you can help me with the art, then that'll be pretty good. But
exactly,
you don't want to do everything by yourself, or you don't want to kind of just push all your resources into just getting out games all at the same time, because I feel like you can get a bit overloaded. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Burnt out.
Like you don't want to crunch, you know, which
God damn it,
which leads to our next talk. And now it's Overtime Overload with Skimitry. That's quite a cool name for a title. Do you want to tell us about it?
All right. So the thing I'm thinking about when I say like Overtime Overload, let's just repeat that several times. It's like there's a lot of crunch time like involved in game development these days, especially like for AAA people, and it's certainly a practice that's very like ingrained in the video game development cycle. And I don't think like I see the why it's like a cheap way to get games out quick. Like when the game release that is coming up, like everyone like just works all the time, and I sort of have a problem with how it's like being idolized, like how the passionate game developers like continue working like weeks out, weeks straight, like no sleep at all, because it's very harmful for the body, for the mind, for the developer and stuff. Like even if he is willing to do it, like even if it's not like being forced upon him by companies saying like you have to do this overtime, like otherwise you could like so guilted into it. Like, don't you want the game to succeed?
You have to mention the buttloads of coffee every developer is mentioning.
Yeah.
Like with each jam, they're like sharing pictures of the bundles of coffee packs and energy drinks they're buying, and that's so unhealthy. Like, who can drink 3 energy drinks straight?
I just think it's important to not to take care of yourself. Like, don't work 20 hours straight. Like, take breaks, go out and see the sun. Like, it's important for your mental health, and you work better the more like rested you are, the more time you have to have a social life as well. And I think that will benefit game developers if they took the time to rest, even if it's like very close to deadlines.
I was following the tweets from Ludum Dare around 2015 or 14, and among all the energy drink sharing pictures, there was a tweet that Ludum Dare is not about exhausting yourself until you cannot bear life. It's about knowing what to do with the given time and how to administer it in some way to make your game, and how to pod it.
Yeah, definitely this point applies. Well, when it comes to kind of us small-time indie developers, game jams is probably where this point is going to be affect us the most.
Yeah, it's like the most easily applicable.
Yeah, and well, I don't do many game jams now, but a few years ago I used to do so many game jams, and I loved it because I'd make so many games. I had motivation to make the game, but because of the short amount of time to develop a game, and because of the always overly ambitious ideas or kind of too many features of a game, I'd find myself cutting features and just And because I do everything by myself as well, I'd find myself just kind of like rushing about, just getting really stressed last minute, just making sure like, oh no, everything's not going to be done in time, oh no.
Panicking about everything.
Yeah, and then once the game was done, I would like not even touch it for a month because I'd be so sick of it, and I'd just like take a break from the computer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's very important that you take your time with things and take the time to always tweak it and keep the game up to par, because if something goes wrong with the game or something needs to be drastically improved and you're not on it, it's going to not work out. The game is going to flop, and so you need your time to step back and look at the game. You need your time to have a break but you don't want to be completely 24/7 on the game, because that will kill all motivation for you, and you need to keep motivated for a game. Motivation is really hard when keeping it is really hard when working on a game by yourself. But
motivation is like taking showers. Like, you shower once, but it won't last forever. You gotta shower again.
Oh yeah, that's a good allegory.
It's a weird metaphor, but I thought it was fitting there.
I think it's like the sort of thing, because when you're drawing, like if you're drawing painting or like you're sketching or doing something like that, it's important. Like I've been taught to step, like get off your chair and like step back and look at your painting, like your canvas, from afar, and like.
Or squint your eyes.
Yeah, like, because when you're sitting
from...
like in front of it, it's like really hard to see like the flaws. Then like you need a little perspective, and like it's nice to have like outside eyes as well. But yeah, it's definitely important to.
I agree with that. I see most of the flaws in the sketches I do from like a distance, not from like very close to it. Because when you're closer, you're so sucked into it that you can't see the flaws, which can only be seen from the distance.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of, I guess, overworking and like sacrificing sleep to get things done. Like with my current lifestyle, I do my day job 6 days a week, about 36 hours a week, I think. When I'm not doing that, I'm working on me and Dimitri's current project, and then I've also now developing a set of 3 video courses, and it's actually quite a bit to do. And so yeah, I've become guilty of sacrificing sleep in order to get things done. And when you do it for a couple of weeks on end, it takes its toll, and you lose like a lot of motivation to get things done. Like, one, because you're tired, you're like, oh yeah, you know, I need to do this, but because you're so tired, you quickly get distracted from what you're meant to be doing, and then eventually you notice how distracted you've got, and you're like, oh yeah, I need to get back into it, and then 10 minutes you're distracted again, and like you sort of get a bit annoyed at yourself a bit, because you're like, you know, why can't I stay focused? And like, honestly, you just need to take a break and get more sleep. Like, stop overworking yourself. Like, and I've done that a couple times now, and you know, eventually I pick up on it and I make adjustments, like going to bed earlier, in order to fix it up. And then also in terms of staying motivated when you're working on a big project, game jams are like don't try to avoid doing the whole crunch time thing and doing the whole rushing thing, obviously.
Yeah.
But they're a good way to take, whether it's a couple of days or a week, like depending on the amount of time in the game jam, it's a good point in time to like take a break and work on something else, or like however long the game jam is, like do the game jam. It refreshes you a bit, it gets you working on something new, maybe even gives you some new ideas, or you might learn something new that you can apply to the main project, you know, and it just sort of gives you a reason to step away from what you're doing and what you might be getting a bit sort of sick of doing. Try something new, and then you can go back to it straight after. Game jams are normally pretty quick, like over a couple of days or something, so it's like, it's not a huge break, but it's enough to sort of rebuild that motivation. And I definitely personally think that releasing a game is a good feeling and motivates you to want to do more on and like release more games. I find it a definite kick for being motivated to work.
I think to prevent like this sort of like crunch time in game yams, like as you said, Nick, like don't be too ambiguous, like be ambitious. I mean, not ambiguous. Be like take the time to like plot out your scope. Don't go too wide or like too big, and like accept that you have this amount of time, and like try to think a bit small. Like try to do your best, but like don't overwork yourself to death.
Yeah, but then another point though is that not everybody is the same.
Yeah.
Some people might they might enjoy working on it a lot, and for me, I have my ups and I have my downs. There's some times where I work on it solid and I'm like, yes, this is a good day, good job. Then there's some other times where I'm like, nah, I can do about half an hour work and then I'm done. And then some people can work on games for so long that that's all they do for every day, and they're absolutely fine with it. And they're like, if you know, like, you're not going over your limit, essentially, like, then keep on doing it. Like, yeah, we don't stop it, but like, it is good to take breaks from stuff. But yeah, everybody's different. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point.
You have to know yourself, so you know when to take breaks, when to do stuff. Also, in game jams, feedback is really important. Feedback is really important for keeping up the motivation, because if you do something and you get comments like, it's really bad, it looks terrible, of course there's gonna be no motivation whatsoever. But if you have positive feedback, like, I really like the colors of this, I like the pixel art, the mechanics look nice, then you get really motivated to finish it.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. And another thing is kind of flipping the table on this. You should also give feedback to others as well regarding it. Like, I find that it's a really refreshing break from actually doing it and receiving the feedback and doing the development, just to take time, check out someone else's project, and then giving them feedback. I found myself a lot recently, like, I've been taking a break from development for a bit now, but I have been so focused on other games development, especially like I've been following a ton of games on Game Jolt, checking them out. Whenever they have like a news post, I'm just like, oh, change this around, it might be good, keep it up. Just people sending me the demos of their games and stuff, and like it doesn't stress me out because I'm not working on it. I'm the consumer in this case. Like, I can do whatever I want to it, and like, but any feedback I give to that person is going to be invaluable, and I can potentially really improve the game. And like, that's a really good feeling for me, and it's really good feeling for the developer because they've got some really good feedback. So giving feedback to other people, everyone should do it as much as they can.
Yeah, that's definitely another thing that I'm guilty of, is not playing enough other developers' games and not giving enough feedback. Like, because I love getting feedback on my games. I like seeing how people like it, and yeah, just like receiving nice feedback. Like, obviously you get the bad stuff here and there, but it's always nice to see good stuff. And then I definitely don't go and try out other people's games enough. And I'm definitely trying to play more people's games now. Like, I've sort of realized that I'm not giving back, you know, like, sort of like people come and play and comment on my games, but I don't do it enough in return. So I definitely want to sort of like swap that around and sort of give back to them a bit and provide them with some feedback too, because I mean, I like it, they probably like it too, and it's just a nice thing to do, I think.
I think it's also important to, like, when you're making games, you should be playing games. Like, it's really helped gaining more perspective. Like, you learn a lot about game design by making games, but you also learn a lot by playing games and like realize, why is this working here when it's not working, like for my game. Like, you learn a lot about how successful game design looks at, like, or how certain systems are handled in other games. So there's like important perspectives there.
You can also study other people's audiences, like in a way, like they might try something new, and then you see how their audience reacted to what they did, and that way you get to learn something about what people do and don't like. Like if they tried a new platforming mechanic where the jumping was a a bit strange compared to your average jumping. And people liked it, then it's like, oh, you know, that's an interesting thing that people enjoyed, or if people hated it and, you know, really harshly commented and, you know, just reacted how audiences do when they don't like things, you know, you get to learn from other people's mistakes.
I think this is like a lot to learn, like looking at a game, and saying like, oh, this feels weird, and then you realize, why does this feel weird? Like, what's not working here? Oh, the jump feels like too floaty. And you realize like the importance of the small like details in like the system and like how things are controlling, and you get a broader perspective of how it's supposed to feel, like how it should feel to feel good.
I feel like a lot of this stuff, like definitely older or kind of more experienced developers, definitely should be doing this like all the time, because like they've been in the, like I would say industry. It's not really an industry, it's more of a hobby really. But they've been in the industry for a while, and they should be getting this under control. They should be giving back what they give. However, for new developers and stuff, because they're new to the game, they might not know what to do, you know. So like that, but like with that, like they may not be as encouraged to make kind of original games. One would say like they'd make fan games a lot more, and that leads on pretty well to the next topic. So now I'm going to be talking about fan games and original games from a new developer's perspective. So, all three of you are regular users of Game Jolt, and you may have seen fan games everywhere. They're everywhere. We can't do anything about it. Like, from FNAF, Undertale, we're having a bit of like Pokemon now, thanks to Pokemon Go. And, like, we may think, it's just mess. It's just polluting the place. Do we need to do quality control now? But here's the thing. It might be good for new developers. Like, think back. When I was making my first games, what was one of my first games I did? I made one using Super Mario sprites. Like, I made a little Mario game, and that's because right at the start, I was getting used to game development, getting used to all the ideas. And the only thing I did know was the existing games. So, and there'd be a franchise that I really liked, and so what I would do is just make a fan game, and then that would give me an understanding of some of the concepts even better. So let's say if you're wanting to make a Dark Souls kind of Souls-like game, the best way for you to get experience would be to essentially just remake Dark Souls. Like, if you take like certain assets from it and all that stuff, yeah, you can get an original game together and all that. But you will learn more by making a fan game. Another reason why they'd be making fan games as opposed to original games is that fan games already have a community. You make an Undertale game, yeah? You show it off to some people who are fans of Undertale. They're going to share it around. They know Undertale, so they're going to play it. They have an incentive to play it. They know people from it. They know how things should work and all that. They will understand references that you make because that's what they enjoy and that's what you enjoy. So, just, like, it's more appealing to make a fan game in that case because, well, they're going to get some feedback. They're going to be like, hey, like, if I made something about, Mr. Quadrigo version 4, and I'd be like, people would be like, what? Who's that? Why is there version 4? What? So it's just, but then if I was just like,
sorry,
don't ask where the Quadrigo came from.
Quadrigo sounds amazing. I want that to happen.
You feel pretty still the game idea. But if I were to make Five Nights at Nick's, people would be like, actually no, you know what? That's probably a bad name. Maybe if I made like Sans and Papyrus go to the park, then people can play it because they know who Sans and Papyrus are. Then, like, it's an Undertale game. They're gonna like it. That's what they like. So, some communities like have been around for ages. So Sonic, I remember Sonic Game Maker games being on the Yo-Yo Game sandbox back way years ago. That was all arranged. And then you get more recent stuff, so like Undertale and Five Nights at Freddy's. Well, speaking of Five Nights at Freddy's, that's taken fan games like to a whole new level. Like a couple of years ago, we had Slender games and jump scare games, kind of just. Well, not, it's more of a Slender, so like you'd have some model following you around some dark thing, and you have to collect N of a certain resource whilst avoiding. And we had a lot of those, but just the sheer amount of Five Nights at Freddy's games, like going back to that kind of experiences in indie games, kind of it gives you a certain kind of motivation just to make a game about this, because it just kind of just drags you in.
I think part of the Five Nights at Freddy thing is that it's also very like, it's quite easy to make like a game similar. It's definitely part of the Slender thing as well, which literally opens the gates for new developers, because it's not like really complex physics and stuff, but like it's easy concept to get a handle on. I think there's even like it's tutorials and stuff like how to make your own Five Nights at Freddy's game.
Yeah.
Which is really like a lot of open resources like that help them.
Yeah, but there's not really one downside. There's multiple downsides, but I feel like the major downside is that if you do it, like in the first fan game does really well, you're just like, well, why would I make an original game? Like, I've gotten such a good response on this. You know what? I'm just going to make Five Nights at Freddy's games. Why not? And then that's where things start to get repetitive. Like, yeah, a few fan games, a really good fan game, like, could maybe a really, really good thing. Like, Pokemon fan games, for example, because Pokemon games are so, like, vast and, like, but then, like, they have the potential to make, like, you can make your own Pokemon, make your own locations, your own characters, your own moves, even. And, like, a really good Pokemon fan game can be, like, you could be up there with one of someone's favorite games of all time. But if you kept on doing it, like, you aren't going to learn anything new. It's going to be the same, like, it's going to be the same bread and butter, essentially. Like, it's, you're going to, like, slowly you're going to get the same kind of stuff. People are going to lose interest, because, like a trend doesn't last forever. So, like, they need to eventually move to, like, more original ideas. So I feel like someone starting with original ideas is, like, right at the start from as a new developer, they're going to have a much harder time getting on this game development bandwagon and growing a community, because of how tough it is. But if, like, starting off with a fan game and then branching off into your own stuff, it's a really good idea. So there's these two developers on Game Jolt. You may not have heard of them, but they made this popular Five Nights at Freddy's series called Five Nights at F-Boys.
Yes.
And
what does the F stand for? What does the F stand for, Nick?
It stands for fun. And their names are their names are Sable Lynn and Joshua Shaw, and so they made, like, I think it was 3 of those games, and they were ridiculously popular.
Yeah.
And now they're making this thing called, I think it's Project Insight or something. I can't remember what it is. But that's a completely original title, completely different style to their games. I think I never played the F-Boy games, and they've already made a community for it, and, like, yeah, it's not having as close to as a big response to the Five Nights at Freddy games they make, but they have a really big community that say, you know what, I liked the fan games you made, let's see now what you do when you do an original game. So it's pretty good thinking for them. To be honest, I think they have a bigger community than, like, I will ever have right now, which, so, like, props to them. But yeah, what are your opinions on fan games in general?
A good
Are they
side
good? Are they
of
bad?
fan games would be a good way to introduce other people to the community. But really, what original games versus fan games fight boils down to is which audience you want your game to reach. Do you want to reach a wider audience? Do you want to reach an audience that would probably build a community around your game, or do you want to reach it to an already built community? Like, it's really about what boiling about. But most of the fan games, if they're done properly, they can be fully enjoyed. Undertale has a really well done fan game called Overtale on the Game Jolt. I think that's the way it's called.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But it's well done, and it actually got me more into Undertale. Like, I really liked Undertale playing it first, but playing Overtale and seeing how well it ties in with the original game, it actually made me love Undertale more.
I think I definitely agree with what you said, Nick. When I started making games, which is a funny story, that it used to be this website called I think it was Playcrafter, which was basically this drag and drop game engine thing. It was all in the browser, and I started there, and I made some game maker tutorial games at first, and then my first real game was a Sonic boss rush sort of game. You just faced a lot of bosses, and it was really I can't remember if I got a lot of response from it, but I think that first game, what got you into that game development is a love for games. Most likely, you've been so inspired by something you played that you want to make something yourself, and I think that's really at the heart of the game development industry. And I think it's really wonderful to see these young people, new people to the industry, try making games, even if it's fan games. It just shows they have been inspired and been touched somehow by games, and it's really wonderful to see people trying to make games themselves.
I definitely agree with more or less everything you said, and thinking about it in that sense, it's a shame to see a lot of people's response to fan games, but it is in some cases validated. A lot of people have a negative response to fan games because they're like, oh, make an original game, stop copying everyone else. I feel like a lot of people fail to see the fact that these people making these fan games are literally just learning how to make games, and it is a shame if they get stuck, like you said, making just more and more fan games and they don't move on. But making a fan game is a great way to open the door to game development, learn the basics, so that then you can go ahead and, if you have your own idea, make it. You've got these new skills that you acquired by creating a fan game. And like you were talking about with the Five Nights at F-Boys guys, I don't know if that's what they started with, but if that's what they started with, not only did they learn how to make games, but they managed to build an audience larger than a lot of the bigger developers on Game Jolts have and may ever have.
Yeah.
And, if they've only just started, that's impressive.
That's amazing,
they've got a huge jump start into the industry. I myself have a pretty damn small audience, if any audience at all, And they've pretty much already got a huge one, simply because, they sort of, through their fan games, they were able to get access to the Five Nights at Freddy's the fan base,
Yeah.
They reached out to all of them through their games. They made a good, I haven't played them, but from what I've seen, they made a good fan game, gained their own fans, and now they have a pretty large audience watching them and following them and looking at what they do.
They have fan games of their fan game. They've made it, yeah.
Succeeded in life.
The important thing about fan games is there's a lot of you talked about briefly about people wanting to have purged fan games, or forbidding them and stuff like that, and I think that's really alarming, because we should because games are more or less I would say games are art. Games are always a form of art, and when we try to censor art because it's oh, it's the same as that art, that's a real problem. And I think it really is, when you try, I'm gonna apply this, when you try to learn to draw, it's really valuable to copy other people. If you look at the Renaissance painters, or other masters, or people who have really practiced their craft, you learn a lot from the way they're doing things. And I think the same sort of thing applies to games, just copying it. You touched on it earlier as well, Nick. Copying a game gives you a lot of information about how is this working, and what are the what goes on behind the scenes behind this sort of game. And I think that's important.
It's a shame that so many, and I feel like it's mostly either more experienced developers or people who just think that everyone should have their own brand new idea. Like, it's a shame that a lot of people have the response that they do towards the people making fan games. And like, simply because these are mostly people starting out doing what we are doing, you know, we make games and we love it. And that's what they're starting to do too. And really, we should be nurturing them in a sense, like, and trying to provide some support for these people getting involved in what we do, and in turn with that, the community that we're all a part of. You know, like, that's what they're doing. They are entering our community and they're just going through fan games. And I will admit, in some cases, like, some of the people making fan games can sometimes act immaturely and be annoying, which I feel like feels a lot of people do give this negative aspect, but I think it's just important to remember that, you know, a lot of the new developers are often younger people, younger, less mature people, and yeah, I think that it's important to at least try and be a bit more accepting and a bit more tolerant.
I certainly... oh, sorry. Go on.
Let them in.
If you're not done.
No, you're good. I'm done.
I certainly see the frustration in people like regarding fan games. Like, I've certainly felt that frustration as well. Like, when you spent like half a year or like several months making a game, and you get like a moderate response, like you release it and you get like a couple of thousand views or something, and then like something with just the name, like Five Nights, that Freddy Krueger gets like 1 million views when it's not even released. Like, it's frustrating to see like your game that you spent so much love in, like, not getting like any of that same response, like, just because it's not labeled in that sort of like fan game service. And but I guess it's sort of just an frustration with game development in general, like not getting, like, you compare yourself to other people and like you feel like justified, like, I should get views because I spent time. But it's like, yeah, the community plays and watches what they want to, and that's not something you should be angry with.
Thanks everyone. This is our first time doing Jolt Cast, so let us know if anything went wrong, if you liked anything, if you'd like to see some stuff in the future. We're all new to this podcast kind of stuff, so don't be too hard on us, you know? But your feedback is appreciated. Thank you very much from all of us here. We hope to see you next time.
Jolt.